Hey, what's up, everybody? Chad Calek here. Welcome back once again to the In a Crowded Room podcast. We're for episode number 28, part one. Yes, this is going to be a part one of a two-parter once again. We're going to be talking about my time spent with the band Motley Crue. And this is in semi-celebration of the Crue's Netflix biopic, The Dirt, which is coming out at midnight tonight, which I'm going to actually stay up to see. I'm really excited about this film for a lot of reasons. Motley Crue is a band that had a profound effect on me, which I'll talk about. But I was really fortunate to also kind of live a life's dream, which I'm going to tell you guys about. But the first time that I had heard the band, Motley Crue, I believe I was 7 years old. My neighbor had got this album and it had a pentagram on the front of it. And I was like, oh my God, is he devil worshiping? I didn't know what that was. But I saw the pentagram and I'm like, what is that? And he said, oh, it's the new Motley Crue record. Have you heard this stuff? And I'm like, no. His name was Blake Rosales. And Blake put it on play. And he played for me the song Shout at the Devil. And at that time, I was heavy into like hip hop and breakdancing music, and believe it or not, the first piece of music I ever bought was Culture Club. I swear to God, Culture Club. I think it was the Karma Chameleon song. Yeah, you remember the Culture Club song, right? Karma, 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 Karma Chameleon. That song. I thought that was a nice little hook when I was a little kid. And I bought that, and then I followed that up with a Van Halen record, and then a Def Leppard record, and then I heard Shout at the Devil. And I'm telling you, something switched in me. I was like, what am I listening to? It was so heavy to me at that time. It was so dark. It seemed like it should almost be illegal, which again made me love it, made me want to hear more and more of it. And listen, I kept listening to the album over and over again, and it was so freaking good, and I was hooked. I was a Crue head that later went backwards, went and found their previous album, the first album, Too Fast for Love, and just like that, I was in. And eventually, I got my own album. I bought the full, LP. It had the pentagram on the front of it. Years later, I would learn that the record company was scared that this would affect sales, so they swapped out that pentagram without Motley Crue knowing and put pictures of themselves on the front of the album, making that original album actually a collector's edition that's worth a fair amount of money today. Well, my album was destroyed because my mother caught wind that I had this, took a look and gave it a listen, believed it to be pure Satanism at its finest, and destroyed that album, which only, of course, fostered my love for the band. And not only my love for the band, but also for just heavy music in general. That started me on my, path into heavy music. Fast forward years later, I'm in high school, and I learn that on the Dr. Feelgood tour, that Motley Crue is coming to the Omaha Civic Auditorium. Laura had heard Motley Crue, but she was not well versed in all of the Motley Crue songs. So I made her a cassette of like best hits, Motley Crue's greatest hits up to Dr. Feelgood, which there was quite a few at that time, especially the Girls, Girls, Girls album and Wild Side and all that stuff. Laura loved it, and we decided we were going to go to the concert. And I had been to many concerts at that point in my life. I had been going since I was probably 12 years old to concerts. And it was usually the same setup. You would go in and the opening bands wouldn't have much for lighting. They wouldn't be as loud as the bands at the end. The second band would have a little more lighting, maybe a few special effects. And the final act would have, really big set of lighting. Maybe some bombs would go off, maybe some smoke bombs, You might see some fire or something like that. And that was the show. So it really came down to how much do you love the music, you know? With Motley Crue, I love the music, so I was super excited to go because there wasn't going to be a song that they could play that I wouldn't know. So we get inside the Civic, we're watching the different bands play, and it's a good show. It's a lot of fun. And it finally gets to Motley Crue, and I remember thinking, man, this is a massive setup. I mean, this is a crazy setup these guys have. There was just so many lights, and there were all these mirrors everywhere. And there were all kinds of things that were hung from the ceiling that were underneath these black, like, cloths that were hanging down. And there was a ceiling crew that was moving back and forth between all of these hanging structures. And I remember thinking, these guys might have done something special for this show. And the lights go down. And this laser face comes on of this guy, Alistair Fiend. It's a character they made years ago. And he's welcoming everybody to the Motley Crue show. And it's a full-figured face floating in the middle of the auditorium above you, looking down at you like some kind of demonic god telling you how you've entered the world of Motley Crue and all this stuff. It was just the coolest thing I had ever seen. And what proceeded was the most amazing concert I had ever visually taken in. The laser lights never stopped. They were constant. They were flying throughout the entire Civic Auditorium. They had the lasers where they would hit mirrors, and they had these mirrors set throughout the entire auditorium, so they would ricochet and shoot from the front to the back everywhere. They had laser characters that throughout the entire concert would come on and talk to you in between songs and in between setups. They had bombs going off left and right. I've never seen so much fire. There was fire going off left and right. And then it came time for the drum solo. And suddenly I see Tommy Lee in his underwear, nonetheless, climbing this tall, skinny rail. And there's a single spotlight on him. And I'm looking at Laura like, what is going on? And he climbs all the way to the top, and he jerks off this black curtain, and there's this drum kit that's hanging on this arm. And he hops up on the drum kit, and he essentially says, every tour I do a drum solo, and I want to do something special for you guys this time. If you don't mind, I'm just going to play you some of my favorite songs, and we'll rock out together. And he proceeds to play like every classic like hit you could imagine. AC/DC, ZZ Top, like all of these, major classic rock bands. As his drums are flying across the top of the Civic Auditorium with laser lights shooting at him. And he gets to the very middle of the Civic and his drums lower and they start spinning in circles and he's only feet above people's hands. I remember I just didn't move. I just sat there going, wow. I mean, they figured this out. I was so blown away by what it would take to make that happen. That this wasn't, four fuck-off guys that got together. Like they had to be geniuses, and their team had to be geniuses, and the people who were there had to be on the top of their game. There were so many moving parts, and it would all have to go right just to pull this special moment off. And it was a special moment because it was one of the rare times in life where for a few seconds I wanted to be somebody other than myself. I was like, I really want to be him right now. I want to know what that feels like to just rock those drums like that and have 5,000 people just losing their mind together in unison with everything he does. And he flies his drums all the way back to where he first climbed up. He gets off, tells everybody, basically he loves them. Thanks for coming out. The show's going to start back up, that type of thing. And then he bungee jumps off the freaking drums. Bungee jumps. Straight swan dives. I'm just like, this is the craziest concert I've ever seen. So when it was over, we were walking to the car, and I was just talking to Laura about how blown away I was by Tommy Lee and his showmanship, the whole band, the whole thing, the whole experience. And I said, I would love to talk to Tommy Lee. I would love to just know what that feels like and how this all came about. And their tour bus wasn't too far from us. And Laura goes, well, here's this tour bus right there. There's a line of people. You want to like go try to work your magic to, talk to him. And I said to her, I said, no, I don't want to do it like this. I go, the day will come where I could talk to him on the same level where we can really talk. And Laura looked at me like I was crazy. And it was a crazy statement. I don't know why I said it. I guess I felt it at the time. I felt like it's a long life, and there will come a time where, in some way, shape, or form, I will be able to talk to him about this night. It didn't make any sense for me to say that, because at that time, I was not even in music. I was still playing sports. That was going to be my future. But I just felt it. I just felt that time will come. I'm not going to beat up this man's tour bus or the rest of the members of the band to try to get into their post-show life, which even back then I could figure out this is not time for fans. This is time for them, But to make a long story short, the Dr. Feelgood tour was the most amazing thing I had ever seen. And to this day is up there in the top 3 shows that I've ever seen. So now let's fast forward ahead from that moment 10 years later. 10 years later, I'm in my band, 35-Inch Mutter, in college. And things are going great for us. We had just won the Battle of the Bands. And the way they did it back then is bands played shows, but there was also a radio voting component to it. And 35-Inch Mutter just had a huge radio single in the song It All Comes Back to Me. And we were getting ready to release Full Scale War, which ended up being a national hit. Went top 10 at Metal Radio. So we won pretty easily. Now, we didn't know what it meant at that time other than we just won. And I am of the opinion that a battle of the bands in any local community is a terrible thing. It just rips the scene apart. Because you can't not enter it, because of course you believe in your band, you like your music, you want your fans to be able to vote for you, but you know that music is subjective. You know that once you enter, if you have a more popular sound, if you have a more accessible live show, then you're going to probably be the band that wins the Battle of the Bands. And we knew at that time we were that. The year before us, Stone Sour had won the Battle of the Bands. We formed the following year, then we won. And the year that we won, Stone Sour was no longer together because Slipknot was now trying out Corey Taylor. So they hadn't even played a show yet as Slipknot with Corey Taylor. So it was setting up something that would have been really ugly had it ever happened, which would have been 35-Inch Mutter versus Slipknot in a Battle of the Bands. But 3 months after we won the Battle of the Bands, we heard that Motley Crue was coming to town and that they wanted to choose the Battle of the Bands winner to open up for them. And I was like, no way. Well, we just did a Battle of the Bands, and we were chosen to be the winner. So initially we heard there's going to have to be another Battle of the Bands. And I was going, oh man, this is going to be Throwdown City. Like everybody and their brother is going to be fighting to the death to get the chance to play with Motley Crue. Then we got the word that no, they're not going to do that. They just did it. It doesn't make sense that the winner of the Battle of the Bands that they just had was going to open up for the Crue, which was us. And it was a bittersweet moment where it was like, well, I can see why people are pissed, but I am not looking this gift horse in the mouth. I am going to take this show, and I am going to meet Tommy, and I am going to rock my freaking heart out to his crowd. And it was going to be at the C.Y. Stevens Auditorium, which is one of the most beautiful auditoriums you could ever imagine playing. It was in Ames, Iowa. Massive, massive building. Right across the street from Jack Trice Football Stadium. Right across the street from the Hilton Coliseum. It was a place that no local band, an unsigned local band, had ever played for a national act. So it was another kind of, first that we can put on our resume and say, look what we did. all the way around, it was a huge, huge thing for us. But for me, it was the chance to go home and tell Laura, hey, guess what? Remember a long time ago outside of the crew bus when I said, I'm not going to go beat on his window. I'm going to get the chance to actually talk to him one day. Believe it or not, fate and destiny have collided. The stars have lined up, and that is going to happen. And it blew my mind. It blew my mind that this actually happened, that out of all the decisions you could make, the billions of decisions that you could make from that moment until when they come to town, they had all led me down the right direction. And it appeared as though this was going to happen. So I was incredibly excited. Right away we went to work. We put together a set that we thought would work well for their crowd, which is always hard. Whenever you play shows with those legendary acts like an Ozzy Osbourne or a Kiss or a Motley Crue, Slayer, bands that open for them will notoriously tell you it's very, very hard because they are such staples in the rock community that the fan base that comes there, make no mistake about it, they are coming to see Motley Crue. So it's not like half the crowd's going to be a 35-inch Mutter rap metal crowd and the other half's going to be Motley Crue. That's not going to be the case. It's going to be a sold-out Motley Crue house of Motley Crue diehards, and those tickets are going to be gone in 2 minutes. And that's exactly what happened. They put tickets on sale. They were gone like that. And I was like, wow, we are opening up for Motley Crue at C.Y. Stevens Auditorium, completely sold out. Let's do this. So the date comes, and the only really, really bummer thing about it is that it just so happened to land on the night that Laura had her parent-teacher conferences, and she could not get out of it. And I was like, oh, bummer. But at the same time, Laura's career is just as important to her as mine is to me. So I respected the fact that she had to remain committed to her children, her kids in her class. And that's just a testament to who she is. And she did the right thing. She did what she should have did. So the night comes. I'm completely stoked. We all load up our equipment as we're pinching ourselves. We make our way down to the auditorium. We get there, and right away we meet this guy who says, great, come on in, load all your stuff here, and once you do, don't move. We'll come back to you. I mean it, don't move. And we're like, okay. And we load our stuff in, and there's this yellow tape, and it's maybe, 20 feet by 10 feet, and it's just like this square tape that comes out from the wall. And that's where all our cabinets are supposed to go, all of that stuff. And we quickly load our stuff in. We had a real simple setup as far as equipment goes, and they had a monstrous setup, as you could imagine. And we're standing there, and a few seconds later, this guy comes back and goes, okay, guys, here's your passes. We get our passes from him, and he was like, now these are backstage, but they're limited access, okay? So you really got to follow the rules for us, and we mean it. And here are the rules. The exit door to the right, we can use whenever we want. We can go in and out and have a cigarette as much as we want. Outside of that, inside the backstage area, we're not to leave the yellow taped 20 by 10 foot area with our equipment. We're not supposed to leave. And I look at him, I'm like, are you serious? And he's like, yeah, we just got a lot going on here, guys. It's a big show. We really just got to, make sure we know you guys are, and you're not, wandering around. So we really can't have you leave this area. You got to treat this tape like a wall. I go, treat this tape like a wall. And I was like, wait a minute. I was told we were going to actually meet the guys in the band and see them backstage and all this stuff. And this guy's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I know you're opening up for the band, but I haven't heard anything about you meeting the guys or anything like that. And I'm like, okay. That's definitely not what I heard. And looking back on it now, they cared about us to the degree that you would care about someone. Like, they can't be focused on us. They have a show to put on. But this did also seem extreme as well. Like, stay inside this taped box. It's pretty ridiculous. So we made our way outside and back in a few times before we finally decided to just chill inside our taped area and watch them set up their crazy stage. And as we're doing it, suddenly I look over. I'm like, yo. And I see McMars walk in. He walks in, looks around, doesn't see us, kind of looks up in the air, super quiet, makes his way to the right, and goes down this long area, which clearly leads them to their backstage. About a second after that, really quickly, Vince Neil comes through, doesn't see us. About a minute after that, Nikki Sixx walks in, and he's with Donna D'Errico, who was on Baywatch. She's got this beautiful black fur on. Nikki's tall as can be. I'm like, holy jeez, he's a big dude. He kind of sees us, kind of gives a wave real quick, and then just makes his way back to the dressing room too. So I'm chilling again, and a few seconds later, I hear this loud voice. Boom! The door comes open. Tommy Lee walks in. What's up, everyone? What's going on? Everybody's calling him T-Bone. What up, T-Bone? And he's talking to everybody left and right. I mean, every person that walks by, he's laughing and joking, and he sees us, and he comes right over. And he's like, what are you guys doing, man? And I'm like, hey, we're hanging out. He's like, you're the band, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, 35-inch Mutter, is that right? I couldn't believe he knew the name of our band. And we're all like super stoked because here's Tommy Lee talking to us. And he was like, man, that's cool. Well, thank you guys for opening up for us tonight. I'm super excited to hear everything you got going on. And he was like, what have you guys been doing? What have you seen? Have you checked out our front of house and all this stuff? And I'm like, well, no, we can't leave. He's like, can't leave what? I'm like these yellow lines here. We can't leave them. He's like, what the fuck does that mean? I'm like, I don't know. They told us to put our bags here, and they said we can go in and outside to have a cigarette or whatever, but that we weren't supposed to leave these lines, like treat them like they were walls. He goes, treat the lines like they're walls. He goes, was this a fucking prison or something? I go, hey, man. I go, it's your show, dude. I'm just trying to obey the rules. And he goes, no, man, 1 second. And he yells over to this guy that they called Machine. And this Machine guy comes over, and I guess this guy is actually running the whole backstage. And he was like, hey, man, these guys are the opening act for the night. He's like, let's get them some passes, man. They can go wherever they want. They're cool, man. Let's make sure they're taken care of. And he's like, and I'll take them back to meet the fellas here in a bit. And Machine's like, yeah, got it. No problem. Bam, right away. And I'm like, what a freaking cool dude. So he turns around. He's like, all taken care of, guys. I got to run and check something. I'll be back out to get you in just a minute. And then we'll catch up. And I'm like, oh, this is freaking awesome. So he runs backstage to his area. And, we're all kind of stoked. We're like, oh, my God, this is awesome. We're going to actually get to meet everybody in Motley Crue. And who knows what they're doing backstage. I mean, these are like the rock party gods, So a few minutes later, you see Tommy coming back. And he raises his hand. He's so tall, by the way. Tall and lanky, very surferish. And he waves us back, and we start walking towards him. And he's like, all right, guys, let's take you down and meet the fellas. And I'm like, oh, my God, this is awesome. This is like a movie playing out in my head. And we're walking towards the door, and Tommy's just going, sold out tonight, dude. I'm ready to rock. Are you guys stoked? And he's like, kind of fanning our flames. You know what I mean? And my heart's pumping. I'm just going, oh my God, I can't wait to see what's behind this door. And it's like there's a countdown going on in my head. I could see the door right in front of me. And it's got the Motley Crue access only sign on it. It's like in my head, it's like 9, 8, 7, 6. I'm like, oh my God. And it's going to be madness in here. I cannot wait. 3, 2, 1. And Tommy busts open the door. And I'll tell you tomorrow night what was going on. Thank you for listening to part 1 of episode 28 of the In a Crowded Room podcast. And should you stay up to watch The Dirt, the Motley Crue biopic on Netflix tonight, I'm going to have my thoughts on that as well, because I'm really interested to see how well Machine Gun Kelly portrays Tommy, having met him in person on a few occasions now. So as always, thank you guys for listening. I'll be back tomorrow with more. All the best.